Hello everyone, it's Michelle Gillmartin here and welcome to Technique Tuesday. Today we're going to talk about expanding the possibilities of your digital dual feed walking foot. So if you have a Luminaire or Solaris, either of the models, whether it was the first one or version 2, the Crescendo or the BQ3050, it likely came with your machine. Some of the other models can also accept and use the digital dual feed walking foot, such as the Dream Machine or the Destiny, and I believe the Stella Air and Altair can also use the digital dual feed walking foot, as well as some of the other models, the BQ2450 and the Aria. If you want to know for sure if your machine can take that walking foot, put your hand in the back of the machine and see if there's a hole to plug it in. If there's no hole back there to plug the foot in, this walking foot will not work on your machine. So your walking foot came with one standard foot that had some lines on it. Today we're going to be talking about some of the optional feet that you have available to you to make light of some of the projects that you might be doing. For instance, I am going to show you first the quilt bar adapter, which is this little part right here, and the quilt bar, and take a look at that. That's set up perfectly to do rows of channel stitching if that's what you want to do. And then you also have the option of buying a quilt bar that still fits on the same adapter, but sets from the left side instead of the right side. So to install this little guy, we're just going to set it on the top of the digital dual feed foot. And then I'm just going to screw the little screw to tighten it onto the foot. And it's done. It's installed. It doesn't ever have to come off. You can just leave it on there. It would not affect how the foot performed, even if you're not using the quilting bar. I'm also going to talk about the open toe foot and the stitch in the ditch foot and the 1/4 inch foot. And I have some fabric prepared. I have a quilt sandwich over here, and I have a 1 inch strip of binding to do a 1/4 inch binding, and I also have a 2 inch strip of binding to show you my favorite binding, which is the I like a 1/2 inch binding. So, and then I have a line drawn on my fabric to do a little channel stitching because I have a project coming up with that. So let's get this guy on the machine. Okay, so I have moved the other feet out of the way for just a moment while we put this walking foot on the machine. I have removed my shank and my J-foot, and I'm going to set it over here. This guy is a heavy guy, and he's really back heavy, so I always install from the back coming forward. So I'm loosening the screw, I'm setting the walking foot on there. And then so I don't get a wiggly walking foot, I just want to give that screw a little crank and make sure that it's on there pretty tight. Then with this hand, I'm going to feel for the slot in the back of the machine and plug the foot in. If you have your machine and you're following along with your machine, you will notice that when you wake it up in the sewing mode, you now have a DF on the screen of your machine for the foot, because it recognizes that it's a digital dual feed foot on there. So the first foot I want to show you is the open toe foot. The open toe foot is one of my favorite feet for doing a precise stitching. I know which number stitch does the perfect 1/2 inch seam allowance. For my binding, if I place the edge of my binding on this row of stitching, of this row right here, which is at the edge of the foot, and I use one of the programmed piecing stitches, I can actually put my needle position in the 1/2 inch seam allowance. With the 1/4 inch foot, the 1/4 inch foot also has, there's 3 piece stitches that are on your machine, either in the utility mode or in the quilt mode, that are perfect alignment to work with these feet. And then the last one is the stitch in the ditch foot, and this one truly is one of my favorite feet. And then after we do that, we're going to do a little channel stitching. So let's get going. I'm going to go ahead and put the 1/4 inch foot on first. I'm just going to lift it up oops, let me get that thread from behind. Let me get it underneath the roller there. And then pop my foot back on. All right. So I'm using a 50 weight quilting thread in the top, and I'm using just regular bobbin thread in the bobbin. So I'm going to begin with this 1/4 inch foot, and I'm going to take my fabric sample, and then here's my 1 inch piece of fabric that's going to be my binding on one side here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this up right up against the edge of my seam here. Okay, so let's take a moment. Let me adjust the camera and let's go check out some of those stitches we can use to get a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Hold on. So you have several different choices for your stitches on the Luminaire and the Solaris. The Dream and the Destiny have the same choices, as does the 3050, the BQ 2450, the Crescendo, the Aria, and many other machines that are in the midline range. You have them in 2 places. So if I'm actually in the utility stitches, which is category 1, I can scroll down to the bottom and you can see I have P1-30, 131, and 132, and they all say P. When you select one of those stitches, you'll get a 2.0 stitch length, and you'll get a needle position in 3 different places. Other place you get it is in the Q section. So if I touch Q, then I've got Q01, Q02, and Q03. So let's talk about them and what they do. I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see that. All right, so the first stitch up at the top, and I'll do this again on a brighter fabric, I guess, is Q. Come on, let me see. Is Q2. Q2 will give you a scant 1/8 inch, a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, or if you're doing top stitching, it will give you, with the 1/4 inch foot, it will give you a nice, neat 1/8 inch top stitching. Q1 will give you a 1/4 inch seam allowance, perfect 1/4 inch. Q3 will give you a perfect 3/8 of an inch. So you have 3 different places where, 3 different, and of course you can adjust your left-right shift throughout to create a different length of stitch if you choose. So for this one, I'm going to go with Q2. Nope, I'm going to go with Q1. So with Q1, I'm going to get a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to begin to put my binding onto my piece of fabric. All right, so I have stitch Q01 selected, and I have the 1/4 inch foot on my digital dual feed walking foot. So I'm going to go ahead and put the foot down, and I'm going to stitch this and pretend it's binding to the edge of my quilt. This is 1/4 inch binding, so I cut my strip about 1 1/8 because you know you always need that little tiny extra bit, right? All right, so let's take a look at pretty consistent 1/4 inch seam. If I were to flip it over, that would give me a nice and tidy 1/4 inch binding. All right, so let's try some. I have a little bit left over. Let's see what it looks like if I wanted to do a 1/2 inch binding. So I could use my 1/4 inch foot for that. So I have some 2 inch binding here because I like 1/2 inch. I like it fatter. I just feel like it's kind of the icing on the cake. All right, so I don't want to use the same stitch. So now I'm going to go to stitch Q3, and that's going to move it, my left-right shift over to the left side of the machine so that I can still use my 1/4 inch foot, but now it's going to be over here. And that's fine. I mean, I can do that, but what I like even better is I like my open toe foot. So I'm going to pop that on. You can see that it's really easy to change between the feet here. And I know that if I put the edge of my fabric up against the edge of the foot right here, and I put my needle in the P or Q2 position, that's going to give me a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So again, I'm using the bars. I can use the bars on the foot as well. So if I wanted to use this as my edge here, I could put that down and that could be my edge, and I could adjust my needle swing. I like to have more fabric underneath my foot, so I'm going to use the line on the bed of the machine as well as the edge of the foot. They're both there. The edge of the foot is on that second line on the bed of the machine, and then I'm going to move my needle over into the position that makes it a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So let's see how that works out. The thing that's nice is I can see everything that's going on with this open toe foot. The other thing I like this open toe foot is I know it's your digital dual feed foot and some of the stitches are grayed out, but there's some really pretty decorative stitches that you can do that don't have a lot of backwards or side motion that you can also do with your digital dual feed foot. All right, so there, again, perfect 1/2 inch now. If I want to do 1/2 inch binding, sorry about that. I'm in business for 1/2 inch binding. All right, so we've done the binding part. I will come back and I will, I don't hand sew binding, so if you're a purist, I save that till the end of the video and you can just turn it off before I get there. All right, so now I want to do a little channel stitching. So I'm going to leave my open toe foot on and I'm going to attach my channel guide. So my first one, I have this part of the foot down. I'm going to put the needle in the center needle position and I am going to begin my first row of stitching. All right, so my eye is not going to be here. My eye is going to be here. You don't want to follow the needle, you want to follow the quilting bar. All right, I've got my first row of quilting done, my first channel, and I have moved my needle position so that when I put this edge on, I have the appropriate space in between. So let's see what we got here. No, I think I need to be, let's see. All right. I didn't need to move the needle position. I just needed to put it into stitch Q02. All right, so I'm going to put my needle down and do a little stitch in place. And now I'm going to do the second row of my channel. This is going to stay on this line that I just sewed previously, and my eye is going to be on here, not on the needle. The needle's going to go up and down whether you watch it or not. How straight you sew depends on if you can actually, let's see, let's lift the foot up so that can get out of the back there. Is if you can actually keep this bar on the line that you previously sewed. If you really fall off the rails easy, you might want to put a line here, or here, so that as this is, you have something to follow. I'm just going to eyeball it. And once again, another row. So I'm going to put my foot down, and you can see how that spacing is. So right here I've got about 3/8 of an inch. The foot's about a 1/2 inch wide. So now it would be moving the needle position to accommodate a wider row of channel stitching if that's what you wanted. But I'm happy with what I have there. So let me just do one more row so you can see it in action. And again, my eyes are here. I will slow down as I get to the end. All right, and there's my 2 rows of channel stitching perfectly evenly placed. And then again, I have the other one that goes on to this. This one only goes on one side. So if you need one for the other side, you can buy it separately. It still uses the same little thing attached to the top of the presser foot. And there, so if you wanted to go this way, you could go that way as well. So I'm gonna pause the camera for a moment, and I'm gonna fold over my 2-inch strip there to make my 1/2 inch binding, and then we're gonna play with the stitch in the ditch foot. All right, I am gonna go ahead and finish off my binding here. If you're a purist, you can turn the video off now because I don't hand stitch binding. But I do have a couple of stitches that I really love. I have my favorite one. And it doesn't matter if you have a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch binding. The stitch in the ditch foot makes it so easy. So I'm going to do the 1/2 inch side first. So I'm going to use the same stitch for both. I like a little teeny tiny blanket stitch. I'm going to leave the orange thread in. Normally I would use a thread that either matched my binding or monofilament thread. But I'm going to go ahead and leave the orange thread in so that you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and set my presser foot down. The stitch that I like is a mini blanket stitch, and it's under the Q section, it's Q12. Under the utility stitch section, it is 1-35. Either one, same stitch. One is closer together than the other, but I'm going to make it my own personal anyway. All right, so it comes out with the blanket stitch bite going to the left, so I'm going to mirror image the stitch. And then the width of the bite is 2.0, and the length between the bites is 2.0. So I'm going to go ahead and make the length a little bit longer. I'm going to make my length be 3.0, and 2.0 should work just fine for the bite. All right, so now I'm placing the ditch part, the blade part of the stitch in the ditch foot right in the ditch. I can see that right now that needle in that position is not going to do what I want it to do. So I'm going to use my left-right shift, and I'm going to move it, and I just know that 1, 2, 5 is the perfect placement to get it in the ditch. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start. So I'm going to take a couple stitches forward, and it does its little bite thing. Again, my eye is watching the blade on the foot, not the needle behind it. I already set the needle into the position that I needed it to be in. So I can trust that if I just follow the blade with my eyes, keep the blade in the ditch area, that it's going to be perfect. And there we have it. The only thing showing is the little bite, and if I turn it over, because of how I measured, it's still fine on the back as well. So let's try that with the 1/4 inch side. So I still want the same stitch. But now when I put my foot down, it should actually still work. Let's see. Nope, it needs to be just a little bit closer. Excuse me. For that to work on that side. So here we go. Again, watching the ditch. Watching the foot that's in the ditch. All right, same stitch. Looking pretty fancy there. Looking pretty fine on the back as well. Let's look at one of the, just while we're here and before we conclude, I'm going to go ahead and put my open toe foot on. And I'm going to show you another stitch that I use periodically to do binding with. And it's kind of a feather stitch-like thing. With your digital dual feed foot on, there is only so much, only so many stitches you will be able to do that are not grayed out. Anything that has a side motion, like a zigzag, a wide zigzag, things like that, or a back and forth motion is going to be grayed out because you really shouldn't go backwards with the with that foot on. So let me find my favorite little feather stitch, and it's under the Q section, I think. There we go. It is Q28. It's not really a feather, it's just kind of a feather. I'm going to make the length longer, and I'm going to make the width narrower. No, that's not the right stitch, sorry. Sorry, had to find my stitch there. So the regular feather stitch I use is under section 2, and it's stitch number 12. So I am going to put the center marking of my open toe foot right on the line. And that's where I'm going to keep my eye going, is right on the line. And there it is, really kind of a crazy quilt way of binding your quilt. So it's got a little bit of, let's see, I got a thread that's stuck, my start thread. There we go. Really pretty look, I think. So thanks for tuning in for Technique Tuesday. Today we looked at the digital dual feed walking foot. We also looked at the quilt guide kit, which is the little piece we put on top of the machine, as well as the guide with the 2 little feet on the side here. Here it is. And also we looked at the option of having a left-sided foot, if you, or a left-sided bar if you want to. We looked at the 1/4 inch foot. We looked at the stitch in the ditch foot. And we looked at the open toe foot. Hope you enjoyed this Technique Tuesday.